Welcome to the NonProfit Voice Tech Series, a special edition of the NonProfit Voice podcast, hosted by Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners and editorial advisory board member of NonProfit Pro. In each episode of this monthly installment, Mark will have conversations with prominent nonprofit organizations and industry thought leaders to learn more about different technology offerings in the marketplace. Join us, and together we will learn more about these innovative digital tools and how to navigate the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
All right. Welcome back. Mark Becker here, founding partner of Cathexis Partners. Today we are talking with Michael Hoffman, entrepreneur, CEO. What else have you done? You've done a lot of things. You're an adjunct instructor, right? You're a film producer, a documentary producer. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. You've got a lot going on, but primarily your focus these days is CEO at Gather Voices. But welcome, Michael. And any other words to add to your introduction or?
No, Mark, thank you for having me, and glad to be doing this. And I think you were mentioning before, like we've known each other for 15 years or so, been in this world of helping nonprofits do their thing and have seen this evolve over the years. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because we haven't kind of gone deep on this stuff in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. And, one of the things that NonProfit Pro team has asked me to do is kind of focus on technology. And I was thinking about the landscape of everything going on, in the current environment, and just thinking about, integrated marketing and how organizations are using video. So of course you came to mind. So I think it would be great to hear again, if you don't mind sharing a bit about your background and what you've been working on lately. I think that'd be a great place to start.
Sure. So I really started my career as a nonprofit fundraiser, which is what connected me to this whole industry in the first place. And then I had an opportunity to work in venture capital and startup internet companies for a few years, which got me excited about technology. And then from there, people started to call me and say, hey, about all this technology stuff. Can you help our organization with a website? Can you help our organization with digital strategy? Can you help our organization? And that morphed into C3 Communications, which is the agency that I founded. And that's spelled SEE number 3. And C3 has been around for a while now and works just for nonprofits and social good organizations. C3's done a lot of work for groups like the Alzheimer's Association and Make-A-Wish and Hillel International and, all kinds of good stuff doing web strategy and video. And C3 is still around doing great work. The CEO there is a guy now named Norman Levintman. He's based in LA, and they're doing a lot of new things and actually creating some products for smaller organizations, which is something that I when I ran the agency I wasn't really able to do because you just have the overhead of staff and people, and to gear up a project you got to be a certain size and everything. And Norman's really kind of figured out how to do that in a new way, to have really small affordable retainers that help with SEO and content marketing and other kinds of things that really help organizations get traffic and people. So that's been great to watch and not to have to run it. So, which is funny. I mean, I loved it, and that's how I learned everything that I know about nonprofits and what they need. But I started Gather Voices 3 years ago because clients were coming to me at the agency and saying, we love those gala event videos you make for us that cost, $30,000 and take 6 months to do. But hey, we're in a world where we need video all the time for our website, for social media, for everything. Can you help us do that? And I couldn't figure out how to scale traditional video production. You have shooters and editors and all this people, and they got to move around to certain places. And and we're just in this incredibly nimble world where video is dominating the marketing mix. And I was trying to figure out, how do we help organizations do that? And a bunch of things have come together to make Gather Voices possible. So Gather Voices is software, not an agency. It's software that makes it easy for organizations to request and collect and create videos from anyone, anywhere, on any device. So being able to ask staff, leadership, thought leaders, donors, recipients, policymakers to record videos. And what it does is it lets the organization create what we call a request for video, which bottles up kind of what do you want that video to be about. And then when the person clicks on the link you send them, or those requests can be embedded into existing workflows. But when somebody clicks on it, the software walks them through making the video you want from them. It checks their lighting and sound. It gives them the talking points. It enforces a time limit. And it sends the video right back to the organization, where we've built some tools to let regular people edit, brand, add calls to action, and publish video content. And so the idea is, today, the people who are running fundraising and marketing and communications in nonprofits are competent to do every kind of content that they need to do. They can write blog posts and do social media and do all these things. But as soon as you say video, it's different expertise, different people, different budget, different timeline. And what we're doing at Gather Voice is really breaking that wall down and saying, hey, we need to let these people use video like they use everything else, because video is so important today.
I love that. So basically, the organization is creating the storyboard for what the message is, what the story is that they want to tell, and then the users, the constituents, are filling in that content by providing the video. I think that's awesome.
The other thing that's happened that's made it possible, two things have really come together. One is that we're in a low trust world. That people don't trust media and brands and things like that. And what that's meant is, over the last few years, that the more polished something is, the less trusted it is, right? So the things we would do at the agency, where we'd have everything look perfect, well, that just shows that it's manufactured by some marketing thing, and I don't trust it. But when I see a donor saying, I can give to a lot of organizations, and I give my main gift here because of the impact that it has, well, that's going to just do more than anything that a marketing team can make up. And people now, everyone is carrying around incredibly powerful video cameras. So that's newish, and that makes it possible. And then the other thing that's happened since COVID is that people are much more comfortable on camera. So people are used to being on video now. And so they're used to watching the videos of people, of amateurs, on video. And so we're in a world where there's really no excuse to be able to expand your video options. And Gather Voices is really that kind of infrastructure that enables organizations to create and collect videos and manage all of that, organize it, make sure it's all legal, make sure it's branded right and compliant, and and delivering ROI and publishing it. And that's really what we're all about.
And this really ties into also what you teach at after hours at University of Chicago, right? With the integrated marketing, getting social media, email, all types of different integrated communications together, and tying it all. I'm sure you have a much more articulate way of tying all that messaging together. It's just an interesting time in our world today, especially with everything going on with the COVID and all the lockdowns, and people being more virtual and more at home than ever. I mean, our company has been virtual since I started it 12 years ago. So we did it before it was cool, but now everybody's doing it out of necessity, and giving them these tools to do whatever, and these tools just being out there and available. It's a whole different world. Is that kind of what are you teaching college students these days on all this topic? What's that look like?
Yeah, so my teaching at U Chicago has really been professional education. So I teach in a certificate program for professionals who want to go back to school and learn, what's happening in marketing. And I've taught the kind of foundational course of really just, understanding basics of marketing things. And the truth is that the structure of marketing, like understanding your pricing and product and place and all these things that you learn in in marketing school are the same. You still need to have messaging. You still need to understand who your target market is, and all of that. So I think there's a fundamental thing that's the same, but the tools in which to reach out and connect to people have changed, dramatically. And in many ways, I think have gotten more technical and specialized. The proliferation of technology is just, in certain categories, is overwhelming, right? Like, what should we use for this thing? It's like, oh, there's 18 of these software packages we could choose. And then things like advertising, so like online ads and all, have also gotten very technical. So there's a lot of specialization we see in there. And the reality is, for small organizations, is you're not going to have the in-house skills to do those things. And you don't want them. You can't afford that, because you need to have generalists who can do a lot of different things with a smaller budget. And you need to go out and find consultants like you and others who know the things they do really, really well, and stay on top of those things. And that's going to be, what you need to do. And the focus, I think, the in-house focus has to be really owning the messaging, understanding, like, who are we? Who do we serve? Who are our donors? Why do they care? And really building those relationships, and then bringing in the talent you need to do the other things.
That's still the rub for some organizations. Some of the mentality out there, even today, still is wanting to own that message to a fault, literally, right, and not letting it go to a certain degree. But circling back, to what you were saying earlier about user-generated content, and how having it being less polished, less marketed, it comes across much better to a nonprofit, every audience, but definitely folks that are supporting nonprofits. They don't want to see what looks like a $1 million production, right? They want to see something that gets the message across very clearly and articulates the message. And user-generated content definitely fits that need. But how do you kind of put that against the discussion of, well, we have to control the message?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because you definitely get that, where there are certain types of organizations, and they've groomed their brands for so long that they're so conscious of what everything looks like all the time, and those organizations are having a hard time, to be honest. I mean, they're just too slow, and we're in a world that's nimble and fast. But there's some really old idea in fundraising that you've heard a million times, that is drilled in the fundraisers, that this user-generated content is really just a version of, and that is this idea of donor-centric fundraising. It's, you hear it all the time, and people don't necessarily practice it. And what does that mean? That means it's not about you, it's about the donor. Like, make that messaging about the donor. I do, in my teaching, I do a lot about the hero's journey, and the idea that in the traditional hero's journey, the hero, is kind of shaken out of their regular world and goes on this adventure, and realizes that they think they're just normal, and they realize they're actually have these powers that they didn't realize they had. And most organizations make the organization the hero of the story. And the organization, in a donor-centric fundraising world, the organization is really the mentor to the donor hero. And so the donor is the one making a difference in the world with the help of the organization. And I've seen over and over again that organizations that really deeply believe that and live that do better, than organizations. Right. So if you think our job as an organization is to enable these people to change the world, then you treat your donors differently, you communicate with your donors differently, everything's different, and it's better, and it works. Because if the donor feels like they are the ones who have agency to make change, then that's amazing. Then they're feeling like, oh, I can do that. I can save a life, But if they feel like you're asking them to be the sidekick, you're asking them to join you on your journey, then that's like, yeah, I don't know. It seems like you got that under control, is a lot of it, right? It's like, look at all the great stuff our organization did. It's like, okay, great. What do you need me for?
Right.
So, I think, and so the user-generated content is really just a way to get to that easier, right? And say to the donor, tell us your story. And, the stories that you want from the donors are stories that will activate other donors. And so a donor saying, I'll give you an example. So we've done a lot of work, and I've done a lot of work over the years with Make-A-Wish Foundation. And Make-A-Wish is very appropriately child-centric, right? And they had this idea, we got to be child-centric. And child-centric meant, for many, many years, child-centric meant the only stories we can tell are about the kids. And so what happened was they created the Make-A-Wish story that everybody knows, which is it starts at that Make-A-Wish event, and the kid gets, something amazing happens for the kid, and the kid's happy, and everybody's happy, and that's the story. Well, that story resonated with a certain amount of people. And for a lot of people, it was like, that's nice, but what does it have to do with me, right? And what we did when I was consulting with Make-A-Wish, what we did was say to them, you can be kid-centric and tell a broader set of stories about the other people who are involved in things. And so I'll give you an example. Volunteers are critical to Make-A-Wish's success. Make-A-Wish is one of the organizations, probably the most that I've ever worked with, where volunteers do the work, the substantive work of the organization over and over again, like, making these wishes happen and dealing with families and all this stuff. And so volunteers are critical, and recruiting volunteers is critical. And so after sort of giving permission to Make-A-Wish to tell other stories, they had this incredible story of a volunteer. And the volunteer said, the story was, and I'll try to find, if you have show notes on this, I'll try to find that video to share. But the volunteer, it started with the volunteer saying, I don't like being around sick kids. Like I see somebody in a hospital bed and I just kind of get the heebie-jeebies. I'm paraphrasing here. It wasn't quite like that, but but what was happening was the volunteer was expressing the emotion that all these other potential volunteers are probably thinking and feeling like, but then they go through this emotional journey and say, I generally feel that way. But when I met Noah, who's this severely disabled kid in a hospital bed, I connected with him instantly. And my relationship with him has changed my life, right? So that's donor-centric, is this volunteer saying, my life is completely changed and enriched because of this work. And that gets a flood of other volunteers, right? Saying, I want that. I want to be like that.
They can relate. Yep. Yeah. They see themselves in that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Really well said. I like it. So give us an example of how Gather Voices is helping organizations with fundraising or advocacy in this user-generated content world that we live in.
Yeah. So let me start with advocacy. One of the things we know is that the traditional advocacy techniques, which we were kind of cynical about when they first started, things like online petitions and stuff like that, just don't have the impact that they used to have. And really, real constituents talking about why they really care about issues that aren't scripted is going to have much more impact on legislators and policymakers and influencers and other things. So being able to get people to say, I care about this farm bill because of X, Y, and Z. Here's how it affects me. Here's how it affects my family. Here's how this COVID relief bill matters to me personally. And I live in your district. That's going to just have a completely different power. And what Gather Voices does is enable organizations to do that at scale. So it's not just the fly-in or we have a camera set up and we can get 10 people in there to do it. Right. Everybody with a phone can become those advocates. And the thing that we're seeing that's really interesting is the videos themselves have use and power, right? So somebody tells that story and you can use that story on your website or in social media or tweet it at your legislator. That has impact. But what we're finding is that just asking people to tell their story also has impact. Having people just record those videos or even just be asked connects them to the organization at a different level. And so, the word is engagement, right? And if we want people to be donors and long-term invested, we need to engage them all the time with activities that matter, that aren't just fundraising. Because you can only ask somebody to give, and we see that in political campaigns, right? They just burn the lists out, and nonprofits are really need the long game, which is you got to give people activities in between those asks for money that actually have meaning. And advocacy is a great one of those things. And asking people to tell their own stories is, again, a donor-centric way to do it, right? To say your story matters. It's our collective story that is the thing that is what this organization's about, right? And so that's advocacy. So we have organizations like the Sierra Club, for example, being able to integrate video into all of their campaigns in a really easy way by embedding these video requests into the regular workflows that an advocate would do online. So saying, fill out this form or sign this petition even, and now make a video to share, and having that right in the flow. So not a lot of times video is seen as like this extra thing, like we did this thing and now we got to go find people to do video about. And what we believe at Gather Voices is, with the right technology tools, you can embed that video collection into things you're doing all the time. So with Gather Voices, you can ask every time somebody donates, you can say, tell us why you care. Every time somebody renews, every time somebody participates in a peer-to-peer event, you can ask them those questions. You're collecting video all the time. Those videos people make deepen their engagement with the organization, and then the good videos get shared and bring lots of other people in. And that's really what we're seeing with Gather Voices. I think I was thinking of you actually in one of our nonprofit clients, the Sick Kids Foundation in Canada, that uses TeamRaiser and has peer-to-peer events. They have this Get Loud event, and being able to use Gather Voices to collect, 120 videos from sponsors and fundraisers and supporters and ambassadors to create a whole different wave of visibility and connection in that campaign, and then generate, more than $1.5 million in donations. And that's the kind of thing that we're seeing when you can actually do video at scale.
That is great, and I'm assuming that the permission, the release is built right into the video submission process, right? The waiver.
Yeah, exactly. So nobody can upload a video through the process, and uploading is super easy. You don't have to teach somebody how to do Dropbox or anything. They just say okay, and the whole thing happens behind the scenes. But before they say yes to the upload, they have to agree to the terms, the privacy policy and terms, which give the organization that worldwide royalty-free license to that content to use the way they want. And so the organizations own it. It's very much the same experience as if I took a camera crew to your house and I recorded you, you'd sign a release form, I'd walk away with the media. It's ours now, right? Same idea here. We're really
without all that work, without all that crazy amount of overhead and logistics and production to make all that happen. They just grab their phone and click. I love it.
100%. And even being able to do single sign-on where people are already logged in, let's say, to their TeamRaiser, personal fundraising page, and we don't need to have their permissions because we've built that into the process of participating in the event, and then we don't need anything from them. They can just launch video creation and make that super easy.
And I think you touched on it briefly earlier, talking about, not just always having the ask for people to advocate or donate or whatever your standard ask is, that this is another activity that you can ask people to do. And when you're communicating, hopefully, with your constituents year round, you don't always want to hopefully have just a donate here or advocate, support this in every email. Maybe it's in every email, but maybe it's not the hero or the main call to action. And having them being able to do that, even if that is the ask, and then really have the primary thing being, give us your thoughts on this, share your message. That is just so powerful. And it empowers the staff to allow them to add in a little bit of, something different into their messaging. So it's not all monotone. right? It's
Yeah,
not always that
totally.
same
And
ask.
one of the things we've also seen is that video delivers 88% more time is spent on web pages that have video on it. Video delivers 1,200% more shares than images or text on social. And one of the things that I'm seeing really impact is that video can really reverse the declines in open and click-through rates in email. So what do I mean about that? Most emails still that are sent out are just big blocks of text, and people just don't have the attention spans that they used to, and they love video content. So if you can put video in all caps in like brackets, at the end of a subject line, you're going to get more opens to those videos. It's pretty much guaranteed. And your mileage may vary, but we're seeing 200%, 50 to 200% difference in those open rates. If you put a thumbnail of a video with a play button on it in your email, you're going to get more click-throughs, guaranteed. And again, in that same range of 100+% increase in click-throughs. So, those are the kind of things we want to make it really easy for organizations to do that, to create and collect videos. And those videos are often videos that you're using kind of for marketing, but there's a whole internal thing to use for videos as well. And I'll give you an example with peer-to-peer. There's the 80-20 rule, right? And maybe it's even the 90-10 of like, who are the good fundraisers and who are the people who just participate, right? Like there's the people who really know how to get their friends to give and really work it. And then there's everybody else. Well, if you can get those people to become mentors to the others, right? What are you doing? What are you doing right? And to create a kind of coaching thing and use video to do that, you're doing a couple of things. One is you're actually giving permission and techniques and things to people who are less good fundraisers to do more. But you're also building community, right? Building much more visibility about, oh, these are all the other people who care about this thing that I care about. And in a time when we're not getting together in person as much, like that's even more important.
And I think that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. Now, it's more important than ever. How do you bring that sense of community when folks are all stuck in their home offices or in their, little pods of work or whatever it might be? And a video is just an obvious, option. So well done. Where do you see the future of all this heading? How's that for a very general, heady question?
Well, I think, we're realizing that everything can't be a Zoom call, right? We're like the whole synchronous thing, like we're all sitting there, we're all looking at each other's eyes at the same time for hours at a time. It's exhausting. And so I think the need for this asynchronous option. So video still works, but it doesn't all have to be synchronous. We all don't have to be on this call at the same time. And we can't all be on this call at the same time, right? So giving people the tools to do this when they feel like doing it, right? When they feel good about themselves and have thought of the things they want to say and contribute. And that's true internally and that's true externally. And so, I think that's one thing where it's going. But I keep coming back to, when I see like clever TV ads or stories that are told, made up by brands, like the insurance companies all have these ads, like, they're all competing, right? Progressive and Farmers and Geico, they all do these kind of silly ads because they have a completely commoditized, completely uninteresting business, and they have to make it interesting somehow. And I think, wow, if they can do that and they can keep our attention, nonprofits should be killing it because we've got real stories. We've got life and death. We've got, incredible survival. We've got heroism. Like we've got all the things for the stories. And so pulling those out, like that's the superpower of nonprofits, and they got to believe in it and discover it and not be shy about it and go after it, put the stuff out there in a way that's less cautious, right? Like tell those stories, get it out there. And that's where you're going to have impact.
I like it. And I was reviewing your article about Saturday Night Live and how they pre-recorded their content, despite being Saturday Night Live, and how much that makes sense. But they didn't lose that feel of the live interaction. And I think, and that's something I've been telling nonprofits as well, especially when they're trying to replace their live events, with virtual events, and and trying to do the Facebook Live and things like that, which is great. And they should, attempt to do that, or maybe do a hybrid approach where they pre-record certain segments and have a go-to in case, technology fails, because that always happens, or Murphy's Law, right, will happen. So I think it's, I loved your article, and I think it's something that I've been trying to scream from the rafters as well. There's nothing wrong with pre-recording your opening ceremonies, your closing ceremonies, your auction discussion,
100%.
All of that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, think about how much better you sleep at night if you have that stuff in the can, and how much less logistics, and how many more people you can get to contribute to the content. You can just have an exponential number of more people, and the more people that contribute, the more other people pay attention, the more interesting it becomes. And we saw that really well. Whatever your politics, the Democratic Party did an incredible job with their convention and the inauguration in terms of mixing pre-recorded and live content. So like in the inauguration event, they had Tom Hanks live in front of the Lincoln Memorial or whatever, freezing. But then they had all these pre-taped segments that they went back and forth from. Mm-hmm. And, that's what you have to do. You have to think about that. Think about, what do we get in the can? And there's a name for that kind of content. It's called simulated live. And meaning for the viewer, it might as well be live. It's recorded, but it's being streamed live. And so what's the difference really for that viewer? So that's how you should be thinking about it and planning it. And, we never thought of Gather Voices as an event tool, but that's a big use case, for pre-recording content, is saying, oh, I can get things for this awards from all these people in advance, and have all this content that we can use. And we can have our donors talking about why they donate, and use that as interstitials in between things in the event. And, on and on and on, once you have the ability to collect and create a lot more of that pre-recorded stuff.
Love it. Yeah, I think it's loud and clear that you need to mix up the ways that you communicate with your constituents, but more importantly, how you allow them to communicate on your behalf, right? And yeah, I think platforms like Gather Voices are really helping bring nonprofits into that space where they can be empowered to do that, and more importantly, again, empower their constituents to do it for them. Because I mean, the staffers at nonprofits are way overworked. They're wearing way too many hats. They don't need to be video producers on top of everything else. So let's make these things easier. And that's what technology is here to do, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think our days of being clever, are over. Like the job of the fundraising and marketing people is to lift up the real stories that are happening all around you, to find them and to amplify the ones that are good, not to be clever. And I think we see that, how sometimes the big ad agencies do pro bono work so that they can, win an award or something.
Sure.
And they do these things that are too clever by half, right? They don't they look cool, or they whatever, but they don't really work, because they're just trying to be clever. And we don't need that. We have the source material, for the most, incredible human interest stories. And, we just have to tap into it.
I love it. Well, Michael, yeah, it was great catching up. It's been too long. I'm sure we'll see each other on the road again someday.
I hope so. I'm, we definitely, I have all these relationships, one of them, where we would see each other a couple times a year at a couple different things and catch up. And I miss that.
Yep, definitely. Well, we'll get back there. In the meantime, yeah, everybody needs to be getting out there and sharing videos. So anyways, thanks, Michael, for your insight, your time, and your expertise. And have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Nonprofit Voice. You can listen to more episodes of The Nonprofit Voice at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/the-nonprofit-voice. And remember, for your convenience, you can stream any and all episodes of The Nonprofit Voice on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.